The only people for me are the mad ones.
The world is filled with the boring and the barely conscious.
And misery loves company.
But we don't have to live this way.
Jessica and I are here to talk to those the system rejects, to radicals and thought criminals.
The ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but push the boundaries of acceptable discourse.
Those who stare reality in the face and dare it to be different.
History isn't made by the timid, and fun is not had by the perpetually afraid.
We are the mad ones.
So let's get to it.
Welcome to the Mad Ones, and Merry Christmas. I'm your holy crap, Jessica. Christmas is this weekend, and I can prove that definitively by the hat that I'm wearing, host Cam Harless. And with me, as always, is your still doesn't have a visible Christmas tree behind her, and thus I am very disappointed hostess, Miss Jessica Green.
If it makes you feel any better, that blanket behind me has Christmas elves on it.
Oh, hey, that's something. I'll take it. I'll take it.
It's my dog's blanket, but
well, I just love that last week at our Christmas party, you dressed up as an elf. You went full on into it. Love that you did that. It was really something else.
Though to be fair, at 4'11", I'm pretty much dressed as a Christmas elf all year round.
That's true. That's true. Anytime you throw on some green, you're an elf.
Yes.
So we have a show about the stepdad of Jesus, the adoptive father of Jesus today, which I'm excited about because I feel like he gets such little press that it's criminal. And I did some reading and some watching of some stuff earlier to kind of refresh my memory. I mean, there's only a few verses about him really in the Bible, but just to kind of refresh that part of it. And there's some things that I was able to notice that I hadn't noticed before. And so I'm really thrilled to talk about it.
So speaking of him being the stepdad, in the image that you chose for the background image, Joseph is pointing at a tool that Jesus is handing him. And he's got this look on his face like, that is not the Phillips head screwdriver. So I really appreciated the stepdaddiness of the picture that you chose.
The Jesus in his full humanity of picking up the wrong screwdriver.
This one? No.
But before we break into that, we should let people know about the things we let them know every week, which is our sponsors, because we have a couple. One being our coffee sponsor, which let's see. I know that before this episode, in one of them, I had one of our Christmas mugs that I made especially for this. And it's, if you get a Christmas mug and you get the Run Your Mouth coffee, the bourbon barrel aged coffee, that's heaven in a cup.
You'll be all set.
You can do that, righteousfelon.com, use the promo, or RYM, I got all kind of confused. Run Your Mouth Coffee, rymcoffee.com, use promo code The Mad Ones. Speaking of Righteous Felon, if you like beef jerky, righteousfelon.com, pick up some Nelson Mandela, promo code Mad Ones. So what's been really cool is we've been doing this Bible study. And so we've been walking through John, we're breaking into Luke, we're doing all of that. And as we did this, we struck up a friendship with Q the Abolitionist. And I was talking to him about, in a kind of fit of what the heck am I going to do after I got ghosted by a couple of people as guests. It happens. If someone says, "Hey, I want you to come on my show," and you can say no. You don't have to say yes and then duck messages. You can just say no. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But I was talking to Q about what he would want to talk about, and that's where this whole episode comes from. So I'm very happy to introduce him in a second, but I do need to mention people get to watch this early if they're patrons, and you should become a patron at patreon.com/themadOnes.
Hi, patrons.
But I spoiled the reveal of who's on the show, but let me go ahead and introduce him. Tonight we're joined by a man that I've been able to get to know over the past few weeks due to our Bible study, a man who interviews with the best of them on his show Unshackled Liberty, a man with a strong beard and a stronger sense of morality, Mr. Q the Abolitionist.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing all right.
All right. Strong beard. You like the beard? Is that a
Yes,
good
we
beard?
totally
That's
judge
good.
our guests by their beards
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
and rank
have
them
to.
according to their beard strength. So
Where am I
you're
at?
pretty high up on the list there,
You
pal.
got a strong, like, consistent beard. Like
Yes.
it reminds me, like my dad had, like, I'm still like, this is still not as lovely as I want it to be, but like my dad, it was like a perfect line of beard. Like there was not a patch in sight. It was thick and I mean, it was. I have much to live up to.
You'll
But,
get there.
you know, yours is better than me in its consistency.
I
And
wish
so
I wish I could grow it longer. I am limited. I'm limited by the woman in my life. Mrs. Abolitionist does not want it to be unruly, and she's got to kiss me, man. Or at least I want her to kiss me, right? So it's like I gotta do what I can to keep her happy. She doesn't actually like the beard at all.
Oh,
frankly.
okay.
So I've worked kind of this deal out with her that the 4 beard months of the year I'll grow a beard, and then the rest of the year I'll not have one. She likes the 3 or 4 day, 5 day scruff, but after that she doesn't like it. So in our family it's September beard, October beard, November beard, December beard. So there's
I've never seen you without a beard. That's going to be very shocking for me.
Yeah.
Do you ever see those videos of the toddler who's never seen his dad without a beard?
Mm-hmm.
And then he shaves the beard and shows it to the kid, and the kid freaks out. That's going to be me when you shave your beard.
My son hates that I don't, my son's 10 and he loves the beard, plus he's like, Dad, you grow a great beard. You should just keep it. And, but I take it off and he gets upset, whatever. But, I don't show my face very often when I don't have a beard, because I do like my beard a lot. I do. And I know that sounds kind of vain or stupid or whatever you want to say, but like
to me, it doesn't.
I like it
because I have a beard all yeared. There's no
a beard all yeared.
It's all yeared.
It's all yeared long. You know what we call men without beards?
Women.
Yeah. So I appreciate that she at least lets you have the 4 or 5 day scruff to delineate you from the female sex.
I want to be clear. It's not a let.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I love my wife and I respect her wishes, and it's a choice that I make to if my wife was doing something that I hated every day and she just kept doing it, it would drive me up a wall.
Yeah.
So me having a beard is kind of like, this is a little, it's a me thing. I get to do it for a while, but then I realize that it's not her favorite thing, and because I love her and I respect her and I want to honor her wishes, I trim it down for the rest of the year, and I mean, that might sound silly to a lot of people, and I understand it, but what are you going to do?
Well, my wife would divorce me. Yeah. My wife would divorce me if I shaved my beard. She doesn't like it when I trim my mustache.
Really?
Marriage is a give and take. You have to give a little and take a little. And
I've even told her, I said, there's a lot of ladies out there that like beards.
Oh yeah.
And she stops and she does the whole like, where are you going with this? I'm like, you should try to be one of them. I don't.
This is cute.
Like, no, we're not doing that. I'm just saying you should try to maybe be one of them. That's all. Like, I'm not looking. I promise. Yeah.
Have you tried liking beards?
Be really cool if you did.
Dear. Yeah. Be a lot cooler if you did.
What are we doing? Yeah.
Speaking of beards, like all of our favorite person ever had one, which is the Lord.
Yep.
That's right.
And I'm pretty sure his foster adoptive stepfather Joseph had one too, because they rocked beards back in the day. That's the time period to, if you want a beard, that's a time period to live in.
Well, Jesus' beard was blonde and he had blue eyes, right?
Absolutely. I have been cast as Jesus.
I'm just kidding.
Several times.
I was trying to
according to the Caesar Borgia version of Christ. Yes. He's blonde
I've been cast as Jesus in church plays a couple of times, and I'm always like, I'm too Aryan for this, guys.
Yeah.
Look at me. I look like I look like what. Now, I won't go too far into that line of joking, but you know what I mean. Like I'm way too German, Irish, Viking looking for this.
Yeah,
this is not how it works.
But you know, this is the time of year though where we get the onslaught of. I mean, you've seen it already, I'm sure. You know, the European Jesus, right? Like, I mean, this is probably not. Yeah. This isn't the topic we want to talk about on the show. I'm sorry for bringing it up, but I mean, okay. I just think it's silly. I just think it's silly that we have to defend the Middle Ages paintings of a European Jesus that was painted by Europeans, so they're gonna have like some similarities there, right? So I don't know.
I just like the paintings.
My favorite is when you're on Twitter and somebody goes, Jesus had brown skin. And I'm like, yeah, probably. He was a Mediterranean Jew from 2,000 years ago. Is this what you consider a gotcha?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most of us are okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love is the arguments are like, they act like most of us are going, well, Jesus was white, right? We're not all Ann Coulter. We don't think that.
Yeah.
Like, and so,
and I don't have enough of an Adam's apple to be Ann Coulter, I'm afraid.
Jesus' last name was O'Houlihan. You know what I
mean? Jesus McGillicuddy.
Yep.
But yeah, like they always argue another non-true statement, which is he was black or this or that, and it's like he was a Mediterranean person. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was Jewish.
He probably looked a lot like the people that are there now.
He probably looked a lot like a Greek man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what does it matter?
It doesn't.
We don't like him because of how he looks.
No.
It doesn't matter.
That's the least important point about Christ, I think, is what SPF he needed, He was bathed in the light of the Transfiguration, which I'm pretty sure you need some pretty hardy skin to deal with, right? So it's cool, guys. Right. It's cool. Though I am sure the apostles that went up on the mountain with him for the Transfiguration came back with something of a tan. There's no way.
Could you imagine doing that?
No.
Could you imagine doing that? Like think about it. So when I read the Bible, I don't know. You guys probably do the same thing. I put myself in it. Mm-hmm. Like I use my imagination. I go, okay, what's this? What would this look like to me?
Yeah.
And the Transfiguration, the Mount of Transfiguration, I just was like, that would be some wild stuff to see that happen in front of me.
Yep.
Yeah. Could you imagine that? Sorry.
I would love.
I imagine.
I think we talked about it in the Bible study. I don't know if we've talked about it elsewhere. We've talked about it.
I talk about it all the time. It's like one of my favorite stories.
The fact is, like, the Transfiguration is so cool because it was human beings seeing what the resurrected glorified body looks like well before the time they thought they ever would. And so it's like this really cool situation where not only did they see Jesus talking to Moses and Elijah, and they saw these great heroes of their faith, but they also saw a glimpse into the future and into the resurrection. And that's I'd kill for that. And I say that jokingly because I wouldn't kill for it because he'd want me to do the opposite.
I'm sure you're not supposed to do that. I think you missed something along the way there, Cam. Not supposed to do that stuff.
I want to get into Joseph, but there's been something that's been bothering me lately that I kind of want to talk about, which it's kind of surrounding the world at large, the coronavirus stuff, the Rittenhouse case that happened already, and there's already been a verdict that we totally know.
Okay.
But like I keep seeing on Twitter and in direct messages all of these wishes of harm from Christians against these different people, and it's like, I don't like Tony Fauci all that much. I don't like Bill Gates. I don't like all these different people, but it's been something that's really hit me deeply lately, where I'm just like saddened when I hear it, because that's not supposed to be us. That's what the world does.
Yeah, we're supposed to.
You know what I mean? We're not supposed to hope that people die for this reason or that reason. Like it's It's been hitting me hard lately. And so I just
Wow.
wanted to mention that. Please stop.
Yeah.
You're a Christian and people are talking about someone who's your worldly enemy. Hope for forgiveness, reconciliation with Christ, a change of heart. Don't hope for their death, please. It's Christmas, for God's sake.
I saw somebody on Facebook saying, this is a person who runs in, various Christian circles that I run in on Facebook, saying something along the lines of, am I supposed to love people who want to kill me? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I guess you thought the love your enemies part of the story didn't apply to you, but it does. Like, if you call yourself a Christian, you are supposed to especially love the people who want to kill you because they're the ones who need it the most.
We're all broken and we're all damaged, and we all tend and trend in that direction, right? The flesh, the carnal ways, they it's something we have to wrestle with constantly. But Scripture's clear, right? We know that Scripture's clear in how we're supposed to treat the world. We're supposed to be salt and light. There's supposed to be something peculiar about us. We're not supposed to mirror the world in the way we interact with each other. Romans chapter 12 specifically. I won't read it, but it says,
you can if you want.
Well, Romans 12:17 recompense no man evil for evil, provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. And and then it goes into probably chapter 13, one of the more misrepresented chapters of the Bible, in my opinion. But that's whole thing. Yeah, but that's very clear. That's very clear, right? What we're supposed to be doing with our enemies, and in the world. If you're a child of God, the world is your enemy, and you're supposed to live in it, but not be of it. Which means we're supposed to show a better way, and we all struggle with that. I'm not sitting here from a position of a guy that's figured it out, right? Because we'll never will this side of eternity. But I mean, that's you bring up a good point, Cam. I think it's worth talking about. I'm glad you did.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I think, and I mentioned it in another episode, but there's this. So back in Jesus's time, when he came to earth, they expected a Messiah. They expected, and when they expected a Messiah, they expected an earthly king who came in power and violence and overthrew Rome, Babylon, as it were. That's what they expected. And what Jesus showed was the suffering servant. He showed himself and showed God as someone who was willing to lay down his life for his friends. And so it's the exact opposite of what they were expecting in a king and in a Messiah. And then you fast forward, you go to Revelation, and you hear John hears. So in Revelation, very simply, there's the scroll with the 7 seals, and no one can open it except for the Messiah. And so John hears someone say, "Here comes the Lion of Judah who can open the scroll," essentially. And when John looks to see who's coming, it's not a lion, it's a slain lamb. And so even at that point, that is what they're always going to expect Babylon to go down violently, but it's the act of the slain lamb, the sacrifice, that we need to emulate. That is what it's showing us in Revelation. It's what Jesus showed us in the Gospels. And I don't know how we end up so often being Jonah, wanting to see the Ninevites destroyed, rather than applauding and praising their repentance and God's mercy. Like, where are we? Why are we Jonah instead of John?
If I can add a little thing to that too, I know a lot of people might think, how can this apply practically to me? What person would love their enemy? What person would love someone who was trying to kill them? And I think you can look at the stories of the martyrs during the persecutions in Rome, where Christians were hunted down and executed, and seeing them going to their death with joy in their hearts, with songs on their lips, with clapping and dancing, affected Romans who were watching it extremely deeply. And there's a passage in John 12 where it talks about if a seed should fall on the ground and die, much will come from it. Many other generations of corn or wheat will come from the seed. And I think that speaks directly to people who might face, dangers and perils when being asked to live in such a way that is opposite to our instinct of the way that we live on earth. I'm thinking specifically of a saint named Phocas, who was a gardener, and the Romans found out he was Christian. They came to arrest him, and he fed the soldiers who arrested him. They came to his house and said, "We're looking for this guy Phocas. He's a Christian. We're going to take him. We're going to execute him." He says, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll help you find him. First, sit down and have a meal." And he fed the men who had come. They didn't know he was the guy they were looking for yet, but he fed them and let them rest in his house. And they said, "Okay, can you tell us where this Phocas guy is?" He goes, I got good news for you guys. He's right here, right in front of you." And it was very difficult for those soldiers then to take that man to Rome to have him executed because he was a Christian. And so it's counterintuitive to live that way, but Christians are made when they see the way that we behave. The ways opposite of the world has made from these martyrs many other Christians.
Yeah.
And so there is a practicality to it. There is a reason for it. So, yes, it might hurt you in your earthly life now.
In your pride.
But he who gives up his life here has life eternal in the kingdom.
Yep.
Well, and that question, a lot of times when you're in these Christian spaces on Facebook, a lot of the questions are kind of tertiary theology questions, and people are arguing about things that don't matter that much. But this is one where, like
whether or not Adam had a belly button.
Yeah, of course. I like to think he did, because otherwise that's weird. But no, it's like with this particular question, you just go straight to the red letters. That Jesus said it. This isn't even a what would Jesus do? It's a what did Jesus do? Because he was on the cross and forgiving the people who had put him on it in that moment.
At that point in time.
It's radical and it's counterintuitive, and it's what we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
The passage that I was
supposed to be weird.
The passage that I was quoting from John is John 12:24. Very, very truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls on the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. And, this is true in both gardening and the Christian life, that if you give up your life, you make many other Christians in the process. And Rome was Christianized by martyrs. People could not understand why they were watching these people go so happily to their deaths.
Well, I mean, Peter and Paul, Roman martyrs,
and loving their executors and forgiving them.
Verse 25 to follow that: he that loveth his life shall lose it, and he that hateth his life in this world shall keep it unto life eternal. 26, if any man serve me, let him follow me, and where I am, there shall also my servant be. If any man serve me, him will my Father honor.
Yeah.
It's neat, man. You keep going and going. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. This has been something that's grieved me. Like, really, it's grieved me. There are group chats and things that I don't want to be in anymore, because it hurts me to see all of these wishes of harm upon enemies. Like, I don't want to see that anymore. That's not one of the good things to think on. And so, like, I mentioned this, and I'm not out here to tell anyone listening, hey, I'm the Holy Spirit. This is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. What I'm saying is, this is what I'm getting, and let the Holy Spirit tell you whether or not what I'm saying applies to you. Like, because since it's the words of Jesus, I'm going to say, yeah, but I'm not trying to be that guy. You know what I mean? Search your heart on that. But we did come here. This is a fun conversation. I like this. But we did come here to talk about Joseph. And so I thought probably the best smash into Joseph is, right before Christmas Eve, we read Luke 2. which is the birth of Jesus in Luke. And I thought I'll read through that official gospel synoptic account. I'll read it in NLT so it's really easy for people to understand. And then we can break into the conversation.
That's
that
become
sounds good to you guys.
Yeah, that's become a family tradition for us, actually. Christmas morning before the kids, it's something we started doing, a number of years ago when I just had two little girls, and now that my oldest is in college and my middle child is a junior in high school, and I have a 10-year-old boy. We do that every Christmas morning. We sit down, we open the Bible, we read Luke chapter 2 before we jump in. I think that's good. That's cool.
Yeah, I like that.
So I'll go ahead and read that. So Luke 2. At that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger, because there was no lodging available for them. That night, there were shepherds staying in the fields nearby, guarding their flocks of sheep. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared among them, and the radiance of the Lord's glory surrounded them. They were terrified, but the angel reassured them. Do not be afraid, he said. I bring you good news that will bring great joy to all people. The Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord, has been born today in Bethlehem, the city of David. And you will recognize him by this sign. You will find a baby wrapped snugly in strips of cloth, lying in a manger. Suddenly the angel was joined by a vast host of others, the armies of heaven, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest heaven, and peace on earth to those with whom God is pleased. When the angels had returned to heaven, the shepherds said to each other, Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see this thing that's happened, which the Lord has told us about. They hurried to the village and found Mary and Joseph, and there was the baby, lying in the manger. After seeing him, the shepherds told everyone what had happened and what the angel had said to them about this child. All who heard the shepherd's story were astonished, but Mary kept all these things in her heart and thought of them often. The shepherds went back to their flocks, glorifying and praising God for all they had seen and heard. It was just as the angel had told them. 8 days later, when the baby was circumcised, he was named Jesus, the name given him by the angel even before he was conceived. Then it was time for their purification offering, as required by the law of Moses after the birth of a child. So his parents took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. The law of the Lord says, if a woman's first child is a boy, he must be dedicated to the Lord. So they offered the sacrifice required in the law of the Lord, either a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. At that time, there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was righteous and devout and was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. The Holy Spirit was upon him and had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. That day, the Spirit led him to the temple. So when Mary and Joseph came to present the baby Jesus to the Lord, as the law required, Simeon was there. He took the child in his arms and praised God, saying, Sovereign Lord, now let your servant die in peace, as you have promised. I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people Israel. Jesus' parents were amazed at what was being said about him. Then Simeon blessed them, and he said to Mary, the baby's mother, This child is destined to cause many in Israel to fall, and many others to rise. He has been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. As a result, the deepest thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your very soul. And I'll stop it there. But it's so, like, that little story about Simeon is so crazy. This dude grabbed that baby and was like, thank you, God, let me die now.
Finally! Oh, it's been a rough life.
Matthew, I think, has a more, is it Matthew or Mark that has a more full account of Joseph and the angel arriving?
I don't know.
So, after Cam and I some months ago had a lengthy conversation about perpetual virginity and Joseph's role in the Holy Family and all that stuff. And so Matthew was a huge source in my studies. So I'm gonna have to say it was probably Matthew, because he seemed to have the most in the Gospels, at least, the most lengthy account of Joseph.
It was also in Luke right before. And I always read Luke 2 on Christmas, so I didn't think, hey, let me back up a little bit.
Yeah, it's Luke 1.
Because in Matthew and Luke, but in Matthew it talks about him being in Egypt as well. So there's a little bit more information. You know, between the Gospels, they tell the same story, but each writer kind of gives his own little anecdotes or little pieces that the others don't give. So you kind of got to put Luke and Matthew together to kind of get the picture of Joseph.
Yeah, it's important when you talk about these 4 books, right? They're they're telling the same story, just from 4 different accounts, right? So you guys know this, but it's more for the people who might not know. They're not 4 separate stories. They're 4 stories told from the same, or from 4 different perspectives. Yeah. So cool.
I do want to find that little bit about let's see, full chapter. Let me get down to this, because I do want to talk about Joseph a little bit more. So this is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until he gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. So,
so it's Matthew 18 through 25. Matthew chapter 1, 18 through 25, right? Yep. That's good.
Being an unwed mother in those days was not, I mean, it's not a picnic now, but back then it was really not okay. Yeah, and they would have probably thrown stones at you until you died.
They'd have killed her. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of one of the things, was even before Joseph was a good man before the angel came to him. And that's something that I think I mean, of course we talk about Mary. Of course we talk about her faith. Oh, God came to her and asked, hey, can I use your
make
womb
you an unwed mother?
I'm going to make life real hard for you right now. Yeah.
And we praise her for that. She did the Lord's work, but very rarely do we talk about Joseph. And if you think about Joseph, part of the reason why Joseph was important in the mix as well is because he was a direct descendant of David. And so in this world, he had a direct line to David, meaning he had the king's blood in him. So if this were Lord of the Rings, he would be going to Gondor and taking the crown, right?
Oh dear.
And so am I wrong?
No, I guess Lord of the Rings. I guess I don't know.
If this were Gondor,
What if it was Star Wars? I mean,
if it was Star Wars, I don't know if there are any kings in Star Wars.
No, I mean,
maybe he was a Skywalker.
Yeah, could have been. Or Palpatine.
Wow.
Something awful. All right. At least I'm not that guy.
But he was connected, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
He was a connected guy.
He was a direct descendant of the king. And if you have to believe that the people who were looking for the Messiah had given up on the Davidic line. They knew it would come from the Davidic line, but they'd kind of given up. But why weren't they looking at Joseph? And why weren't these people? Why was Herod in? Why shouldn't he have said, I have kingly blood and this is what I should do? But he didn't. He didn't seek anything for himself. And marriage in that time period was typically between so the girls would have been between like 12 or 15 during the betrothal period, and then they typically got married around 15 or 16.
Yeah.
So Mary was a teenager.
Yeah.
And the men, when they got married, this is one of the things that's it's not directly mentioned in the Bible how old Mary or Joseph were, but if it were
just culturally of the time, right? Yeah,
culturally,
we know this, understanding the culture of the time. Yeah,
culture of the time. He would have been 19 or 20.
Yeah,
that's typically when people got married at that time.
Yeah,
that's how old the men were.
So this is a part where I mentioned that the Orthodox have a different tradition for this. That in there's a 2nd century tradition that the Orthodox Church holds to, that Joseph was an older man and had been previously married and was a widower, and so that Mary was actually his second wife, and that the siblings of Jesus come from that marriage. I know that Protestants don't necessarily agree or adhere to that tradition, but that there are different traditions. That one, when Cam and I talked about that, I did a lot of research into that, where that came from, and it's actually a 2nd century tradition that the Orthodox Church still has now. So in our icons, you will see Joseph depicted with gray hair, whereas in Catholic or Protestant traditions, he'll be considered a younger man.
Yeah. Well, not in Catholic though. Catholic believe he was older too.
Okay.
Because I was reading some of it, and there were some people in the Eastern and Catholic areas believe he was like 90 or something. Like there's a lot of conjecture, which it's the only place they could kind of find something, because I studied into this, where this came from was from a kind of what they called a kind of, I don't know how to put it, but like before James was written, he'd written out a gospel, but it disagreed with the other gospels in too many major ways, so it didn't make it into the canon.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that is the only source that I've found for the older Joseph, is something that's in the Apocrypha, but not in the canon.
So what I was taking the Catholic perspective from was the art. Yeah. In the churches, he is depicted as younger in the churches in Catholic art. Yeah.
I know this. So what happened in Catholic art was, for a while they did the same thing. They had him older, but then in Catholicism, they were trying to venerate him more and use him as a someone to intercede for us, because they prayed they pray to Mary, they pray to Joseph as well. And so over time, he became seen less as a tertiary character and more as a strong character. And so over time, their art started changing towards the younger looking, because he was a carpenter and he did this and he was strong and he was the more or less
manly
the light
virtues
of the patriarchs. Yeah.
Right.
And so that happened over time. And so though they believe he was older and had a wife before, that's the art is just based on kind of how they view him in his nature and character.
There is an icon of the Nativity that the Orthodox have that I like quite a bit. And it shows Mary in the cave with Jesus. And then down in the right-hand corner, or I'm sorry, the left-hand corner of the icon, you see Joseph. He is depicted with gray hair and is an older man. And he's sitting there kind of like, and he's thinking real hard. And you can see him, he's kind of vexed by the whole situation. And in front of him is a shepherd in a fur cloak, who's kind of like talking to him. According to some traditions, this is a depiction of, what he thinks the people. Yeah. Wait. So there's two ideas about it. One is that it's either the devil or the people he thinks will judge him, who's trying to convince him to put Mary out. And then the second tradition is that it is an angel telling him, don't worry, don't put her out. But what I like about that icon is that Mary is in the cave with Jesus, but her eyes are pointed down toward Joseph. And the reason for that, we had an iconographer come to my catechumen class recently, and she said the reason for the depiction of Mary looking at Joseph in this icon is that Joseph represents humanity. and her eyes are on him as she is in the act of giving birth to Jesus, an intercessor on behalf of humanity, because through her, humanity is being saved. And so it is one of the only icons where Mary is not looking at Jesus, she's actually looking at Joseph. And I think that that's very powerful imagery. But I don't think, whether you think that he was old or young is what John refers to as a tertiary belief. Not something for, I think, Protestants and Orthodox and Catholics to quarrel over.
This isn't worth fighting over. Yeah.
Right, I agree.
I agree. Yeah,
I find it interesting though.
These little. We're talking about Joseph, right? So it's worth bringing up for the conversation.
Right,
but,
and so I
tend to believe that he's of a more traditional, more traditional interpretation of his age, which would be 19, 20 years old when he gets married. Yeah. This is his first wife, his only wife. I read here in verse 25 that of chapter 1 of Matthew says he knew her not until she had brought forth her first son. And he called his name Jesus, and that just means new in the biblical sense, right? So there was a consummation of marriage there. So these are the things that I tend to believe when it comes to that couple, to that married, to those married folks.
That is, of course, a one of that point that you just brought up is the theological debate that goes on between theology scholars about whether this means, whether the until means, what we interpret it to mean, and so on and so forth. To me, it's unimportant. It's not primary to the story, which is that a virgin gave birth to a child in the first place.
I agree. That's interesting. Yeah, when you talked about perpetual virginity earlier, you brought it up. I don't know if you saw my eyes go whoop.
Yeah,
that's one of those things where me, and for the people watching, I am a fundamental independent Baptist. That's who I am. That's so there are, I don't want to say we're not fighting over anything, but there are differences in the way we see certain things.
Yeah. And that's okay. And for you to tell me this is what I believe, and for me to tell you this is what I believe, that doesn't mean we're having a conflict. This is just different church traditions.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're both Christ believers. And so that makes you my brother, regardless of whether we think Joseph had gray hair or not.
Right.
What I think is really cool about Joseph, though, is
I like to think of Joseph as the lead singer, Leonard Skinner.
Yep.
Sure. Wrong. That's the wrong one. Sorry. Wrong guy. My bad.
ZZ Top.
But what's cool about Joseph, like I was saying, is he was a good man before the angel came. Because if you look at how marriage works back in that time, you have the betrothal, and which is what Jesus and Mary were. They were betrothed, and then there's essentially like a year-long ish wait before the actual marriage, and so they say their vows as betrothed, and then they follow through and consummate the marriage at a celebration. And he forewent the celebration, but he saw that this woman that he loved, he seemed to love, was pregnant, and in this time he knew he didn't do it, and so he thought initially that someone else did it, and a man of the law at that time would have said, I'm going to divorce her publicly. She's going, and you know what happens when you divorce her publicly? There's a chance of a stoning.
Yeah.
There's a chance that Mary could have been stoned. But even before the angel came, he goes, no, I'm just going to divorce her quietly. That way she lives, the baby lives, all is well.
It was the most honorable of his options, given that he thought at the time.
Yeah.
Before the angel showed up.
And then the angel was
like, can you imagine your girlfriend or your betrothed comes to you and she's like, look, I'm pregnant, but it didn't happen like that.
It's not what you think. It's not what you
think. Right, lady. And then for her end, she's like, I got to go to this guy and tell him that I'm pregnant with God's baby, and he is not going to believe me.
And there's no way he's going to believe it. Right. And I look at that, and I think, and that was Cam, what we were talking about in that DM was the faith of Joseph in this. And even though the angel came and straightened it all out for him and let him know what was going on, there was still immense pressure from his like cultural pressure,
Right.
to act in a way that he would be expected to act. You're going to divorce this woman. You're going to void your marriage. It's not going to happen. She's going to go off and be a single mom if she even survives, right? And you're going to go on your merry way with the rest of your life, and you're going to find somebody eventually, right? But the faith that he had in God, the faith that he had in what was actually happening, because I mean, he's got to buy into this whole Messiah thing too, right? Mm-hmm. He's got to go, yeah, this is real. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
And he's got to live it out. I think of that from the perspective. And if you were to put me, and I love my wife to death, and none of my children are saints, right? But like, we've been married 24 years this December. So if you go back in time 25 years from now, right, when we're engaged to be married, and she comes up to me and she says, dude, I got something to tell you. I'm pregnant. We know it's not yours, but I'm telling you, it's God's. This is God. I'm carrying God in flesh.
Immaculate conception.
I'm like, lady, get out of my face, right? Like, I mean, like that's, I'm just saying, 25 years ago, that's how that would have gone down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention that after that point, regardless of what he did, Joseph was then seen in Nazareth, where he was known as a person who either broke Jewish law and impregnated her before marriage, or a dupe who let her get pregnant by some other man and then raised the child as his own.
It was real cool.
Walking around with an unfaithful woman.
There's more to that too, because we don't really understand from our perspective the idea of ritual uncleanliness. This wasn't just, I'm going to be a nice guy and let her live. He's taking on this possibility that he is now unclean before the sight of God.
True. Yeah.
And the deadly seriousness of that to the people of the time, we can't, from our perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, she screwed up. They're not going to be married, of course, but you don't kill her for that. In those days, it was much more serious, because it meant you as the male man were no longer going to commune at the temple with your religion and your God.
Yeah.
That was deadly serious.
Yeah, that's that immense cultural pressure. I was talking about. It's like there was piles and piles of weight on his shoulders that we couldn't even comprehend today.
Right.
Right. We got to give that guy credit. We have to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's, could you imagine being in his place after that though? Jesus is born. He goes back to work as a carpenter, mostly working on stone, because there wasn't too much olive wood to work on back then.
Not a lot of wood back then.
Back there where they were. And so you have this baby that is growing in wisdom and in stature, and you get to help him. You get to teach him carpentry. Joseph would have been, I forget what's the name of the Jewish schools. I doubt they called it that back then.
Synagogue? No, that's the church.
Yeah, I mean they would have been at the synagogue, but it was what do they call the Jewish schools? I always forget. Yeshiva.
Oh, okay.
He would have been in yeshiva, and then he would have taken Jesus there and taught and talked to Jesus about God and who God was, and taught him how to to construct things, how to build houses, how to do all of this stuff. Can you imagine teaching the God of the creator of heaven and earth how to build a house? Like, how cool.
And at what point do you go, come on, man, you already know this stuff?
I also think a lot about, him as a young child having to be taught to eat, having to be taught to walk. At some point, you have to teach him not to run out into the street so he doesn't get crushed by a cart. How do you discipline the Son of God? I'm sure that was fraught with all kinds of like a very difficult thing to do. I mean, it's hard enough to discipline your own children that you love. But this one's the Son of God. You're not going to be spanking. Right.
But I mean, it does say in Luke that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and men. So like there was learning processes. Yeah. Like he learned how to do things. There's some like I love Catholic fan fiction, and I'm not trying to be mean to Catholics, but there's some of it that I don't know what else to call it, where he had made a bird out of dirt and he blew, and he made a living bird as a child. And like there are these little stories of Jesus before he was 12, before he was 30, doing these things that are just like, where is this? I'd like to, it's probably in Gospel of what's the one that everyone, Judas? No.
It's in one of the apocryphal texts, though. I know the story you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so it is part of like tradition somewhere. It's just not like some Catholic.
I don't know
on the
whose
internet
tradition.
It's not part of the canon. Yeah, it's not part of the canon. It's just
okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I did see a comic recently of a petulant toddler Jesus refusing to get in the bathtub, and he's walking on top of the water, and Mary is saying "in," which I liked quite a bit.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I think that this is, when we're talking about Joseph, I think more than anything, we're and this isn't, I mean, for Mary we could talk about motherhood, but with Joseph, we should mention him when we're talking about fatherhood, and what it looks like, and what the sacrifices are it is to be a father.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, I don't know, man. You're talking about raising, what you were saying about, I want to go back to what you're saying about raising Jesus at a young age. It goes to the humanity of Christ too. To think about all of the things that he had to learn as a child, becoming a man. We like to look at Jesus as, and rightly so, he's very literally the manifestation of the creator of the universe, right? This is our God in the flesh walking amongst us. And there's a power that comes with that when we think about the power and the authority and the wisdom that comes with that. But even then, he was a man.
Yeah.
He was a man. He was a man, and that means he was a child. That means exactly like you said, Jessica. He had to learn to not get run over by a cart as he was crossing the street.
Yeah.
And all the things that you have to teach your kids now, he had to be taught. Now, maybe he was a quicker learner, a quicker study. Maybe there was some things about, he wasn't going to go steal, a crayon from the, box of crayons from the, from the grocery store or whatever, because of, he had, there's like some different things that, maybe he didn't have to deal with, but maybe so. I don't know. He was 100% boy, he was a boy.
I don't know.
He was throwing rocks,
Yeah. I don't know that God would have given him to human parents if he had not needed a mother to swaddle him, because he would have been cold. You know what I'm saying? So that's a really important point, because if he had not gone through that, he wouldn't have been fully human. If he had just popped onto the earth as a 33-year-old man, that's not a human. None of us do that. We go through, learning, all of these things as children. You throw rocks and you learn not to do that because you don't want to hurt your friend. You're like, oh no, I've made you cry. There are even instances in the gospel where it talks about Jesus being upset about things, and he doesn't have this blank slate of non-emotion because nothing affects him. So as a child, things would have affected him. He would have had to gone through that process that we all do when we encounter our first animal that's died, and things of that nature, like learning the harsh realities of life on earth.
And Joseph was there to lead him through that.
To lead him through that, exactly. Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, and what's interesting though is like we talked about. I called it Catholic fan fiction. That's tongue in cheek. I don't dislike the Catholics. It's just funny. But one of the things that's interesting about Jesus in this conversation about his divinity, the hypostasis, the 100% God, 100% man, is you don't see him begin to do miracles until after the baptism with John, when the Holy Spirit entered him and started doing work through him. And so obviously he had to learn to walk. He had employable skills, and then chose to walk around and preach and tell people about the kingdom of God that was at hand, the kingdom of heaven. He was this little walking tabernacle of God that was creating little tabernacles as he walked around. And could you imagine being a part of that? Like, I'll be thrilled when my kids do something cool when they're adults, but they're never going to do that.
Dude, I was psyched when my son head kicked somebody in karate. I was like, that's awesome. But, but he's not doing Jesus stuff,
Yeah.
But also, we were talking about how Joseph had to sign on real early to this Messiah idea. He also didn't get to live to see it.
Yeah.
And that's something to mention about him too, is he had to sign on for this full wholesale, and he never witnessed walking on water or healings or anything of this. Not that we know of. I mean, maybe he did. Maybe the child Jesus did healings. We don't know. But from what I gather from the scriptures, that stuff didn't start until he was a man. And so Joseph never even lived to see any of this stuff and had to sign on wholesale for it.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know much about him. That's for sure. We know some key points, and the rest of it's speculation.
Mm-hmm. He definitely wasn't mentioned after the episode with Jesus at the temple when he was 12. That's the last we hear of him in the scriptures. And so after that, we can assume that, as many people did in those days, died. Now, whether he was an old man and he died timely, or, died of some other means, death, especially for men, was common in those times. So he's not there. Yeah, he didn't live that long. He wasn't there after a certain point.
Yeah. But you could get gangrene from stubbing your toe back then and just,
right.
Quick,
Yeah. It's probably why they didn't shave too much, you know?
Yeah. You don't want to nick a jugular. You know what I mean? You're done.
Yeah. The water wasn't too clean back then,
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I think is important, so in Genesis, when it talks about the creation of man and woman, it says that God created them in his image, which was man and woman was created in the image of God. And so in order for human beings, little ones, especially for us, to understand, and in any way, in a very shallow way, in the long run, because we're imperfect, our parents are imperfect, but in order to understand the character of God at all, we have to see both of these aspects in concert and working together to raise us. We see the masculine, we see the feminine, we see the protector, we see the nurturer, we see all of these different, of course, men and women will have different levels of this in each of them, but man and woman is part of the complete image of God and who he is, because that's who he made us to be. And so Joseph was important. Jesus needed to see that just as much as we do in order to fully grasp what we're going through. Talk about all the other things Jesus needed to understand. Temptation. Of course, I don't have the devil walking around offering me the world if I jump off of
Could you imagine that? I don't know. You put yourself. This goes back to that whole thing. Putting yourself in the story, right? Like be the fly on the wall for that conversation. Jesus is in the wilderness, 40 days of fasting, and then he's tempted by the devil 3 times. It's like, that's fascinating to me. Just I don't know. I think about that stuff. I'm like,
I can barely keep myself from eating midnight snacks. So the idea that I would fast for 40 days and then you'd be like, how about some bread? I'd be like, bread me up, guy.
Yeah,
but I'm not Jesus, and thankfully so.
Yep.
Guys, I will be right back.
Okay.
So, what is it that you think that you pull out of the story for Joseph for yourself as a father, as a Christian?
I'll tell you what. I think the faith of Joseph, I kind of touched on that, I think, a couple times. I'm amazed by it because I couldn't see myself holding that same line that he holds. And so whenever I hear or see something that requires me to dig a little bit deeper in my faith and just kind of like hang on for the ride, I don't know, man, that's got to be it. That's got to be it, I think. But we don't know much about the guy. So I think it's hard to draw things out of him. I just, that's a tough question. I don't know how to answer it. I think I did the best I could.
It's just, and that's the thing. Like, he's definitely easily one of the top dads of all time.
Yeah,
because
and we know almost nothing about him.
Right. And that's what's so I wish that that Luke had been like, okay, so let me tell you about Joseph a little bit, because Mary told me about Joseph. Let me tell you about who he was, how he acted. I mean, I would have loved to see that. I mean, it talks in the Bible about how if you wrote everything Jesus did, you'd be writing books for eternity. But I'd love to have that book. I'd love to understand this man that, I mean, he may not have loved the woman. I mean, there's no declaration of that in the Bible, but I think that the love that he had is shown through his initially wanting to silently divorce her rather than to do it publicly and shame her, and then so I think that shows that he loved Mary. But this man,
or at least there's a realization of commitment and honor.
Yeah,
and to do his best to not humiliate this woman.
But I mean, it's incredible. I love that we have, obviously I love that we have Jesus and his example, but we know a lot about David, and we know about how much David screwed up, and we know how much what the good things that David did. But how cool would it have been to have a little chapter on Joseph, just so that we had a little more of a positive
just a little
person
bit, right?
in the Bible,
Right.
Because it's like the Bible's really great about showing the very best and the very worst that humanity has to offer. But I would have loved to have another chapter on Joseph, just so I could see good. I want to see a little more good.
See what he's about. Yeah. But I mean, you're right. But maybe there's something to be said about that. Maybe when you're the father, of your children, or you're the head of your family, maybe the underlying point is it's not about you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something to take away from it. I mean, I just now kind of popped. It's not about me. I'm dad, I'm husband, but it's about my family, and I got to push them out. I got to do what I can to raise them up to do the right things. It's not about me. It's about the next generation. It's about the children that I'm bringing up. Maybe that's something to consider. Maybe that's one of the reasons why we don't know enough about Joseph, because it's not about him. It's about Christ.
Well, and it's like what.
But I don't know.
John the
I mean,
Baptist
we're just
said.
talking. We're just having this conversation. I don't know.
Well, it's like when John the Baptist said, I must become lesser, so he will become greater. That, I mean, Joseph didn't make a scene. He didn't push himself. You don't read all of these things about Joseph, just that you knew he was in these places and that he was faithful. And I mean, that's the real thing to take away from it. You're right. It's his faith, because that was far more than a mustard seed.
Yeah, dude.
That was a mountain's worth of faith.
He had to believe the unbelievable, frankly.
Yeah.
And be willing to deal with the pressure that came with it.
Yeah.
Knowing that the majority of the world is not going to believe this.
Yeah.
I mean, knowing ahead of time, right? Like we know as Christians now in the 21st century, we look around the world and we know that a lot of people think it's baloney.
Yeah.
Okay. But we don't have a lot of skin in the game compared to him.
Yeah.
Our skin in the game is, especially being Americans, it's okay. We might get laughed at.
Well,
we might get laughed at or whatever, but he had to live his life with a woman that the people of his village, of his community, thought was unfaithful, raising somebody else's kid, and he had to hang on to that faith. I don't know.
Not to mention that he had an easy out.
He had
an easy out.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't like, oh, well, he has to do this because people will think if he had an out. I didn't touch this woman. And then they'd be like, well, she's obviously not a virgin. It's like, well, she kind of looks like it.
Well, she kind of is.
She's pregnant, but she is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's like, he had an easy out, and he didn't choose the easy out. And I think that's honestly, that's something that I've been learning myself lately, is, with everything that's been going on in our lives and with jobs and stuff like that, with the government response to pandemic or whatever. My easy out is typically, it's something that I've been told by God not to do. And it hurts. It's painful to not take the easy out.
I just had a thought about this, which is that in the selection process of people that God might have placed the Christ child with, it seems to me that, he's choosing Mary for her great faith, but maybe also Joseph is chosen here because he knew he had the strength to be the kind of man who would keep faith and keep this woman and keep her safe and keep her child safe. And so he too was selected every bit as much as Mary was. And the difference between them is while Mary was asked her assent, Joseph was simply thrust into the situation and had to cope and had the strength to do so.
Think about the hall of faith in Hebrews, where it talks about Abraham and how his faith was credited as righteousness. And you have all these different people that are mentioned in that way. And Joseph is easily one of the most faithful men that you can find in the Bible. Yeah. Joseph didn't have a Bathsheba.
No.
He didn't have these things.
Delilah, he didn't have any of that. He didn't have any of those problems. You know,
he had a situation pop up that he could have gotten out from under super easily. And he said, maybe I'll do it the better way so that she doesn't get killed.
And he didn't even need 3 days in a whale to do it, man.
Right.
He didn't.
And then a shiny dude comes into his house at night and says, "Hey, that's God's son. I need your help here. Could you help us out? Could you make sure that she doesn't get killed? Could you make sure that he makes it to adulthood? Could you be his father?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm in."
And it really tells you a lot about stepdads, awesome. The roles of stepdads who, without an angel at all, just some kid that comes along for the ride, and they hundreds and millions of them across the world do this every single day and say, I'm going to take care of this child. He didn't come from me, but I'm going to make sure he becomes a man in this world.
Yeah. And
to the men who are out there doing that, you are in a great, great tradition.
That's good.
Of Jesus's stepdad who did the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah. Foster parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite people, step parents, foster parents. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just a regular dad. And I for a short time in our life, we were essentially fostering one of our nieces on my wife's side. And let me tell you, we also had my oldest at the same time. And it's not easy raising someone else's kid.
Yeah.
I do truly believe, like Joseph, you have to be called to it. I think it's a special dispensation of grace to be able to truly be a good stepdad, to be a good foster father.
And it shows not only love for this specific child, but a concern for what becomes of the future. Because, you toss this kid aside, who knows who brings him up, what kind of person he turns out to be. You're showing like the world, I want to give you a good person, and provide into the world a man, and there's a shortage of good men in the world, it seems, these days. And so if you're out there making sure that our young guys come up as good men, you're really doing a service to everyone. You're providing something to the world.
And talk about how much you love their mother if you're a stepdad. If you choose to actively be a good father to that child.
Yep.
Like that is an act of love in many directions. And
well, there's stability there, and kids want to see that. They need to see that, know, and they need to see the value of affection and the stability of a loving family,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think Jesus needed it the way that we do, but one of the things about humanity that I've found and I've read in the past, and I've seen it happen in every person that I've talked to, honestly, about this and their father, is people base their view of God off of their father. People see God through the lens of their father. Mm. So being a father is a very important job.
It is.
Because because Jesus called God his father. And so that is how people see God. And so if you have a bad father, or an absent father, or a father who didn't take care of you, or a father who didn't love you, you're not going to have a good relationship with God. And so being a good stepfather, a good father is immensely important.
You're standing in the gap there, and you're doing what you got to do. And that's true. There's a lot of atheists out there that either they'll admit it directly or if after getting to know them, you'll find out that they generally have had not great relationships with their father. So therefore they don't have a great relationship with their God, because you're right. They see there's a parallel there,
I went through that. It was difficult. And I remember being very deeply affected when I was going to the Protestant church in my town, that the pastor had said something that knocked me out for a couple of weeks. I thought about this. He said, don't act like you don't have a father, because you do. And that idea shook me. Like, because when you come up in bad circumstances as a kid and you don't have parents who look out for you, the idea that, someone telling you do have a father, that's a big thing to chew on. Like, wow, someone expects something out of me. Somebody wants good things for me. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know how to act in light of that. And that takes some getting used to.
It's neat.
So like I said earlier in the episode, I viewed God, like my father, as having a very perfect beard. So
he's got to, right? He's got to have a good beard. I mean, he's got to.
So since it's,
didn't he have when in the Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, where the fingers are almost touching? Yeah. Isn't one of those guys supposed to be God? And doesn't he have a pretty wicked beard?
He has a pretty wicked beard, yeah.
Well, if Jesus is the image of God, then he's definitely got a wicked beard. So.
He's got to. You're giving me ammo.
Totally Chad beard.
I'm gonna hand this over to the wife and be like, God,
hey,
God's got a beard.
Do you want me to be a godly man or not? So Christmas is it's Saturday. It's in a couple of days. So what are your traditions? What do you do to prepare for what have you at this point been doing to prepare for the nativity for Advent?
Yeah, I don't know, man. We have an Advent calendar that we've been going through, just little stuff like that. And there's little trinkets in there for the kids, and sometimes it's candy, sometimes it's just little like dumb little like erasers and stuff that they can. Nothing too extravagant, House decorations, of course, but what we try to do is we definitely try and focus on, cheesy, right? The reason for the season, right? Everybody says it, but but no, we do. We want to focus. We're a fundamental Christian family, and we worship Jesus year round. So there's something about celebrating his birth that is kind of neat, but it doesn't really change a whole lot about what we do. We're not just I don't want to go there, but one of the things that we do, like Christmas morning, I was telling you about, we do read Luke chapter 2, and that's something that we started doing real early, and the kids get a kick out of it. They enjoy it. And then it helps us focus on the reason why we even open presents, like it's not about the presents, it's about the one gift that you cannot live without. And that's the gift of salvation that comes through Christ. It comes through Jesus, and him being born has allowed that opportunity for us. We're saved by grace. We're saved through faith in him, and that's the gift that we focus on year round, but also now during the Christmas season. And one of the things that I think we catch a lot of heat for is we don't do Santa. We've never done Santa. If there's anybody watching this who's got kids, cover their ears, but Santa's not real.
No.
Did I just do that on your show? I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I'm sorry. But we don't do it. We've never done it. And the point was, there are some things in life the point is for us is there are some things when we raise our kids that they're just going to take on faith.
Yeah.
And they have to take Christ on faith because they don't get to see him. They see his word. They read his word. They see the evidence of creation all around us. They see everything, points to Jesus in this world, but you don't get to see him until eternity. So there are things that they have to take on faith. So we didn't want to confuse them. We don't do Easter Bunny. We don't do Santa Claus, but we do the Tooth Fairy. We do the Tooth Fairy because there's nothing wrong with with the free market exchange, of goods
of
and
teeth.
money. Yeah, teeth and
So
money.
In the Orthodox Church, we celebrate Saint Nicholas as one of our most important saints.
Cool.
And he is especially known for slapping a heretic. So there's the American version of Santa Claus, which is the jolly white man with the beard, and that's all well and good. But there was an actual historical figure named Saint Nicholas, who is, a heretic basher. So
That's funny.
He slapped Arius. According to legend. But no, I never believed in Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Not one day in my life did I. And I don't think my mom ever really did it. I think we read the one book that we read every year. I think I have a copy. Oh, I have a book. Ooh. Called Santa and the Christ Child. And it's this book that my mom would read every year, and to make sure that we'd see Santa, but it turns Santa into
wow, look at that.
He was there, huh?
So it's not saying he was. It's a story that recenters that even Santa bows to Christ. It's interesting.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
but I never believed in Santa. I'll have to read you this story at some point, Jessica, because it's
that is an interesting image. I gotta tell you, I was not prepared to take that in.
But
go ahead.
I want to put you guys a little bit of comfort here. My kids do know that they are not to go out and tell other kids that Santa doesn't exist.
Oh,
they're not the guys they're not the kids out on the playground making people cry. That's not what they do. Or at least that's not what I think they do.
I came up in the American secular Christmas tradition, and I remember being like 6 and them doing Santa Claus stuff and me thinking, I'm a little too old for this. I don't think kids, for the most part, actually believe in Santa Claus. I think everybody knows pretty early on that it's your parents doing it.
I knew some.
Oh, really?
I knew someone who did.
Well, I held on to it for as long as I could. I think it was more of just like a utilitarian thing,
Well, my mom didn't
if I pretend to believe long enough, I'll keep getting these good gifts. I don't want to.
Yeah, my mom didn't really. We didn't believe in Santa in the house, and she, her thing was, it was similar to what you said, was that, when she got older and after she found out that Santa wasn't real, that called Jesus into question.
Yeah.
And so that's why she didn't do it with us. And we'll play games with Santa, but not one of my children believe he's actually real. But we'll play we've played some games, and we'll read that story with the understanding Santa's not real, but we're pointing away from the consumerist Christmas towards the real reason for the season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that book is. It's a good memory.
Anything we can do to destroy the lexicon of the elf on the shelf monstrosity, I am all for. Because that is a creepy tradition, and I want it to die. The elf on the shelf. Oh my God, I hate it so much.
We sabotage my wife with that every chance. We just put the elf in all kinds. Well, my wife is easily scared. Which is great fun for the rest of us, right? So we just kind of
alone.
That elf pops up in strange places, and it's every time you can hear her screaming throughout the house, and we just giggle. It's like, oh, got her again. Time to hide another place. Let's go.
Terrible.
Yep.
Terrible.
And it's creepy, right? It's a creepy little thing.
It's so creepy.
Yeah. Creepy. So we love it. We do it. Yeah. This is Abolitionist. She gets it all the time. Yep.
Well, the good thing about Santa and Elf on the Shelf is that it teaches children that the government's going to be looking over their shoulder their entire life.
Yeah. Not
The
not
size.
the best message.
Now I have to rethink everything. Oh,
Yeah.
you did that on purpose, didn't you? Did you do that on purpose? Yeah. That's great.
I do. Well, that's what's funny is because we have one, and we're not. Kaylee doesn't want to do it this year. I just always have fun doing weird things with it because it's a fun toy. And when I bought it, I was like, why does this make me think of the NSA? Why does this make me think of the NSA?
You're right.
It's creepy, dude. Like apparently now he has operatives in your house reporting back. Like it's creepy,
right? And it's like the whole, if you don't behave in a certain way, you're not going to get the gift. Well, that's the kind of the opposite of the message, really.
No,
and
that's why people got the vaccine to get a gift. Ooh. They had to behave a certain way. They're conditioned from an early age.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I didn't. I just, I'm reaching.
You're good.
I'm reaching. Yeah.
you're good. Well, that's the thing. I love Christmas. Like there are people like what you say, people talk about Valentine's Day. I love my wife all year. We don't need this one day, this Hallmark card holiday for it. But what I love about Christmas and what I love about Easter is that there are periods of time where you can really focus on the most important parts of the faith. Mm-hmm. Like really dig into these. Like digging into the incarnation is so cool. Digging into the resurrection, into Good Friday. Like these are such great times to not only center these ideas and really dig deep into theology and who God is and what he means, what he's said, what he's done, but it also just gives it such a fun atmosphere. So it's very good for kids that you can start talking about Jesus and they get to see gifts and say, Jesus gave you the ultimate gift. It's these wonderful little tie-ins. And I appreciate the heck out of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, in the Orthodox Church, Easter is definitely a much bigger holiday than Christmas is, but not by much. They're really, two of the most important days of the year is the Nativity of Christ and then the resurrection of Christ. And so that period where you start the Nativity all the way up through Pentecost is just this really important time to embrace your heritage as far as what you have been given, how you were given it, and the process through which you were saved, through what am I trying to say? Through which you will be resurrected, through which your sin is purged. All of these things are of vital importance. And yes, they're important all year. They're important to remember in June and July and all those kinds of things. But this is a special time of year. And
especially
that's why
since it's the darkest time of the year and the coldest time and the saddest time. It's like people who don't like Christmas, I don't understand them. People who don't like Easter, which is like the start of spring. It's like this is the darkest time of the year that could be the saddest. And for many people, it's a very sad part of the year, but we've got this hope. And it starts at the sad part, ends, and we get the resurrection at the happy part of the year when the sun starts coming back out, when the flowers start to grow again. I'm not in California, of course, because it's like that all the time.
It is. It is. At least down here. You go up north, it gets a little cold. Yeah.
That's during Pascha, the Christ is risen is that's something that we're shouting back and forth at each other because it's such a pivotal event in our church calendar. And our liturgies start out with our priest coming out and his hands are up in the air and his Christ is risen from the dead. And it's a huge part of the year. So this nativity is the lead up to Pascha. And so during nativity, we do a fast. And so I'm in a fasting period right now. It's not important that I'm fasting, but the fasting period is like a spiritual boot camp. And you're really trying to dig down and get in touch with, the important aspects of your faith during this time. And that's why we were focused on doing these pre-records so that we could have the month of December off so that it can be focused on, like the church events are numerous, and there's a lot of extra services to go to. And, I'm just really, really excited and grateful. Glory to God for bringing me home to church,
Cool.
so I could be there for this season. I'm so excited for it.
That's cool. Neat.
So much beauty
Yes.
that people miss out on. Because I've taught, I'm not a Thanksgiving appreciator. It's fine, whatever. It's practice for Christmas.
It's a warm up. It's junior varsity. It's a warm up.
Yeah. And it's like so it's like when people say that their favorite holiday is Thanksgiving because you just eat and it's not stressful and this, that, and the other. I'm like, why are you doing Christmas so wrong?
Yeah, first of all, if you think Thanksgiving you just eat and it's not stressful, you're obviously not a woman, because this is like the Super Bowl right now for us.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, don't tell my wife Thanksgiving's not stressful.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And then secondly, as Americans, we've been living in like almost never ending prosperity as far as food goes. So the idea that we're just like going to gorge ourselves is like, when do we not gorge ourselves?
Yeah.
If anything, I appreciate that this is actually a fasting period, because I'm like, it's something different. There is a difference here to fast at this time. And I appreciate that, because gorging, I could do that any time of the year.
I'm convinced that people only love turkey as much as they do on Thanksgiving, because that's the only time they cook it. And I believe that the only time they cook it is because it's not worth the amount of time.
It's a terrible bird. It's a terrible bird. It's a terrible bird.
Like chickens are better.
The best, dude, chickens are awesome. The best turkey I ever ate was mediocre.
Right.
It's terrible. It's a terrible bird. And I know we're gonna make a lot of people angry when we say that, but it is definitely an inferior bird.
It is.
Righteous Felon makes a really good turkey jerky. Okay. So I will give them props for that, because they did find a way to make turkey good. But I generally agree with you.
You have to dehydrate it.
You have to dehydrate it and then cover it in peppercorns. But it's really good.
Right.
Well, it's like
really good.
It sounds great, and I'm not even joking. It does sound great because I like turkey.
Yeah, jerky's good. But no, it's like turkey. It's like they're like, oh, well, you must not know how to cook a turkey. I have had turkey made. I've made it myself. My wife has made it. I've had my mother make turkeys. I've had my father smoke turkeys. I've had fried turkeys. I went to a gourmet restaurant and had someone make turkey. If you don't have the gravy with the drippings, turkey is nothing.
Yeah,
it's now the gravy is what's good. Yeah. Like pouring gravy on everything on your plate. That's what's good. So just admit that you like gravy. It's okay. Right. Gravy's great.
I have talked to my wife for a couple of years now. I need to get a new smoker, because I think next year is going to be the Thanksgiving of smoked brisket.
Ooh, I'm coming to your house, dude.
That's what I think it's going to be.
Yeah. Make room for the greens. We're coming.
I don't know if you look happy or unhappy right now.
That
Quest.
sounds great. That sounds
this is really good.
I'm like,
because ham on Christmas.
I'm gonna. You know what I'm gonna do? I think I'm gonna following in your footsteps. I'm gonna do.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Yeah. It's a little too late. Sorry, it's over. But maybe next year. Yeah.
Brisket, new brisket tradition, because turkey is a trash bird.
It is.
I'd like to shoot it, but I think they're just fun. Wouldn't they be? I think they're part of the reason why they eat it is it's an easy bird to kill.
Yeah.
And if the tradition goes back to, the Pilgrims, and, they're not doing so hot. It's wintertime. They might die. And that was an easy bird to kill and cook and eat.
I will.
But I don't think that. Yeah.
Bow hunters, like who longbow hunt, and I'm talking about literal like Native American bow hunting. They hunt turkey because it's an easy bird to kill with a bow and arrow. So,
I was watching,
which speaks to its lack of intelligence, frankly.
Right.
It's a stupid bird too.
But I was talking to a food scientist a couple weeks ago that I met on online, and he was saying the problem with turkey is the way that we farm it. He said wild turkeys are a little bit better, but the way they farm turkeys and the way they're kind of made today is it's impossible to not make them dry, because in order to cook it all the way through, I think it's one of the parts, I want to say the legs. No. The legs take longer to cook. And so the breasts are usually dry by the time the legs are fully cooked. And he was saying, you're going to have a dry turkey. So learn how to make gravy, because it is great with gravy. And I'd be like, it's okay with gravy. But
I hear what he's saying, but if you know what you're doing, I mean, I've prepared probably 15 birds in my time on this planet. I know what I'm doing. So like, if you follow,
not great, is it?
I mean, it's because the bird itself is not, it's flavorless, and that might have something to do with the farming. But as far as making a bird that's moist, if you know what you're doing and you follow traditional methods, it comes out fine. You just have to know what you're doing.
He was saying you have to kind of choose between good skin or fully cooked, essentially.
Well, the skin is where all the vitamins are, so you gotta have good skin. That's where all the vitamins. You gotta eat the skin. It's the best part of the bird. Any bird, duck, chicken, whatever, and that's where all the vitamins are. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny. Like
all the vitamins are.
What was funny was I was on.
Follow me for more health tips.
Yeah.
I do my Christmas. What's the word? Troll every year, starting November 1st. Say Merry Christmas and pisses everybody off. Well, someone butted against me earlier, and they put a picture of someone with a goose, and I was like, I know you don't realize that's a goose. You think it's a turkey, and you're fighting me, but it's not a turkey. That's a goose you got there. Have you had goose?
Goose is great.
No.
I actually really like goose. Goose is fattier, and
it's a Christmas meat.
Yeah, and so it does.
Christmas has the best meats.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if you've ever had duck before, but goose is similar to duck as far as like texture and flavor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fattier, so not a lot of people enjoy fatty meat anymore. But that's where the flavor is, kids. So, and with turkey, you have to cover it in butter, which is, people are afraid of butter now too. So that's why I think you're getting all these dry birds, because people just don't know how to use fat anymore. But
yeah, I don't care for turkey. It's gonna be it's brisket season next year. We're gonna plan this.
There's fat and brisket too. That's good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're going full brisket. We're getting off the plantation, and we're going with brisket.
Good.
So
that's good.
We have hit our hour and 30-minute mark, which means we are nearing the end. So here's the big question that we do on the show: is we typically talk. We're a show of hope. We believe in hope. There's a lot of people right now, like we talked about earlier, who are very what Malice would call black-pilled. They're people who are very sad, very depressed, people who've lost their jobs, people who've lost family members, people who've died, who've died by suicide over the last almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Q. Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Can you
We've
believe
been doing
it?
this for a while. Yeah.
Or 2 years actually, since it first started in China. But China.
China.
Are
we all gonna try it? China.
I can't do the voice.
Here's the trick. You're not saying China. You're saying the second part of a woman's genitals. China. See, it's what it is. Right. I'm telling you. That's the trick. China.
Oh, wow.
But due to that, we like to end our shows with the question, what gives you hope right now? What is something that helps motivate you, helps you carry on, helps you continue?
Well, so you're asking me?
Yeah.
So it's this topic, dude. It's I mean, you got a fundamental Baptist on your hands right now. I'm gonna get into the gospel, right? So it's Christ. That's all it is. That's what gives me hope. This is the reason. This is the season for hope. When we celebrate the birth of Christ, we look to Him to save us. We look to Him to give us eternity. Without, I mean, there's nothing in this world that isn't going to perish, right? The only hope you have in eternity is in Christ. That is it. Yeah. And anything short of that to me is empty, right? So this is the season for that. I think you ask what gives me hope. Christ gives me hope. Christ is the reason why I'm able to keep moving every day. Why I'm okay with being on the outside looking in, being in the world but not of the world, working, kind of being the weirdo around that nobody can understand because I'm not like them. Christ gives me that hope, and I'm raising my family on that. I'm living my life on that, and I'm putting everything that I have, mentally, spiritually, in that. So, that's it. That's what I've got, man. Hope in Christ alone. There's nothing else.
Yeah, I agree. And well, that's why you can't ask me every week, because I'm just going to be talking about the resurrection and being able to hug Jesus. That's going to be my answer. Because I mean, just imagine that moment where you actually see Jesus face to face, and you're able to, and he's going to hug you. Like, let's be real. He's going to hug you. And could you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine that moment? I can't. I can, but I'll just be a ball of tears.
Yeah, I've got this image of like tough masculinity that I'm trying to keep going here. If you push me down that road too far, that's all going to come falling apart.
I'm trying to keep that here. I'm trying to keep my masculinity as well, but I'm going to hug that dude. It's like when I met Josh Smith. Like, I don't know if you've met him before, but like, dude, that is easily the biggest bear hug I've ever gotten in my entire life.
Oh yeah.
That dude, I mean, I was surprised he didn't pick me up and crack my back. That's how much of a bear hug it was. And so it's these little moments that, we need human touch. And I'm saying, I'm excited about Jesus, but I mean, like, people right now need human interaction and touch and affection, and it's been withheld from them or threatened away from them for 2 years now.
Yes.
And it's Christmas, and Jesus came to set the captives free. And that's what we're doing with this show. I mean, we talked about a lot of political stuff in the past, but I would say with how we're talking, what we're doing now, I'm more of a freedom fighter than I was when I was just talking about liberty.
Nice. Yeah.
And I'm happy to be there. That's where I should be.
Through Christ is the ultimate liberty. It's the ultimate freedom.
Yeah. Now the Lord is a spirit, and where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, with that, is there anything else you'd like to impart upon our wonderful listeners right before Christmas, which is Saturday?
Yeah. So,
those days, right?
Well, I don't. We touched on a lot of things. Talk about Joseph, I think, and the Holy Family. Talk a little bit about Mary. Talk a lot about Jesus. I imagine your audience is relatively well versed in spiritual things and in Christian godly things. But if you have anybody, I'm gonna put this out there because you don't get an opportunity to do this very often. If there's anybody listening or watching that is unsure of what this is all about and want some clarification, I'm going to give you my email address. That's qabolitionist@gmail.com. And you can send me any questions you have. And if I don't have the answers, I will help you find the answers when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to salvation, and how you know whether or not you're going to heaven, how you know whether or not you have an eternity with Christ, because the other option is not great.
Yeah.
You're going to spend eternity somewhere, and you might want to figure out where that is. And if you have any questions on how you can figure that out, contact me. I'm sure Jessica can help you out too, but I'm just speaking for myself. You can you can call on me and I'll help you figure it out.
Yeah. Also,
if you contact me, I'm just going to pass you along to Cam, by the way, because he can attest to the hours I've spent bawling to him about whether I'm a good fish or not.
Also, you are a part of our Bible study.
I am.
Right.
And so if anyone wants to join that, just tweet at me at Cam Harless, and I will put you into both the Twitter message as well as the Discord. And if they want to find outside of your email, qabolitionist@gmail.com, if you want to follow Q on Twitter, that's Q_@Q_abolitionist.
I'm like a PG kind of troll. I don't know. I'm not like the worst guys out there, but I like to poke
you can
fun
play in the
at people.
sandbox.
Yeah.
And he also has a show called Unshackled Liberty. The link is in the description. I tried to go to the website on your Twitter account and it didn't go anywhere.
Dude, I don't know what's going on with my show. I'll be honest with you. We Gumbo and I are working through some things. So recently, just give you a backstory, but we've both moved from Hawaii recently. We started the show. We live down the street from each other in Ewa Beach, Hawaii. And, we've worked together quite a bit. We've known each other for probably about a little over 10 years now. And he moved to the East Coast. He now lives in Jacksonville, Florida. I live in San Diego, California. Trying to get our schedules to link up to do shows and episodes on a recurring basis. It's real hard. So we have a lot of episodes out there, some goofy stuff that you can listen to. The website I stopped funding. I just kind of let it go because I just was like, I don't know what we're doing there. But it's a good show. We enjoy it, and we will be releasing more episodes. It's just we're not able to keep a good schedule right now. So.
Well, and if you ever want to come back, our doors are open to talk about all kinds of other things. So
I love talking.
Yeah, talking is fun. So with that, we'll pull you off the screen and we'll go through my long list of things that are coming up and where you can find us. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining the Bible study.
Yeah, man.
I'm
glad you're doing it. It's good.
I think that right now it's in a really cool place, and I think that it's going to grow into something really great, and I'm glad you're a part of it because I could always use some backup, so I'm not the only one going, okay, let me put on my my theology cap and
well, I don't know how much of a theology guy I am. I've been a Christian for about 25 years and I've been reading the Bible for a while, and I got some good, I've had some wonderful mentors. I've had some really good pastors that have kind of led me along the way and shown me some things that I've learned a lot from. But I just appreciate the opportunity to be part of your Bible study, and I'm having a good time with it. And this world, this space that we're in, this liberty sphere, I mean, we interface with a lot of degenerates, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I say that as lovingly as possible.
Putting it mildly.
You know what I'm trying to say, right? Like,
yeah.
And to your credit, Jessica, you hit it right on the head. Christ is liberty. That's where freedom is. That's where liberty is. And if we can reach the liberty community for Christ, I think there's a lot of awesome stuff that we can do as a community. Frankly.
Well, and that's one of those conversations I had with Iowa ANCAP. I don't know if you know him. But I was talking to him about the show at one point, and he was like, you know what? I'm a pastor, and I can't reach the people that you can, because he said that, what was it? That if a prison minister had told him, if you're going to teach in prisons, you better learn how to cuss.
Yeah.
He said, there are people who will only hear you if you speak their language. And he said, I'm not saying you're vulgar or cuss too much, because I've kind of cut that out completely. But
yeah, we've been doing a really good job, haven't we? Good for us.
We have done. But the cool thing is, they're in this space that we were in and are kind of moving out of, but are staying adjacent to. We're able to talk to people that we couldn't have otherwise. If we hadn't, been trolls, if we hadn't fought the same things or had the same feelings about that. So I'm very excited about it. But again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate
it. And I meant to tell you this beforehand. If you want to hang out for after, feel free to hang out, and
okay,
we'll be back. But
awesome.
I got to talk to these people now.
Okay, right.
All right. So you people, am I going to call them beautiful or ugly this time?
I think you should call them beautiful. It is the Christmas season after
That's
all.
true.
Cam.
That's true. That's true. Hello, you beautiful people. We have one more show left this year, and that's it. You'll notice over the last couple of weeks, they've been dwindling down. Usually I have 4 that I'm showing you. I've only got 1 to tell you about because we've got some cool stuff coming, and all of that information will come later. But our New Year's Eve episode is coming up, and we are going to be joined by the very great Dent at Dent in the World on Twitter, as well as Mr. Brad Binkley from the Propaganda Report, which I happen to be wearing their shirt right now. So join us for that.
It was a very sensual, reveal.
I had to move the hair out of the way. You know, I had like, you know, Adam and Eve, all the pictures have the hair covering the nipples. I had to let it out. But that's next week. We're going to have a sort of New Year's Eve party, talk about the last year, what we've gone through, what we've learned, what we're looking forward to in the coming year. So join us for that. Beyond that, like we've talked about a couple times now, we have a Bible study. If you want to join it, we are talking about Luke and Acts at this point, and we'd love to have you. We'd love to walk you through that as we walk through it ourselves and learn and talk. And we haven't argued yet, but you know, there are going to be times where there's points of disagreement, like we had with talking about Joseph earlier in this episode, where we kind of look at the different things, the history of it, stuff like that. It's a fun time.
Yeah, it's one of those very rare spaces on the internet where you can actually have a disagreement about theology or tradition, and it doesn't devolve into like screaming chaos and terror. So I really appreciate that, because it is a unique space.
If you bring the chaos, I will remove you.
But also, it's a huge sausage fest in there. So, you know, I'd love to get another lady in the Bible study. That'd be great. So, ladies, hello.
Ladies, hello. Get yourself a mug. I put so many of them out there now. I think there are 14 different mugs. Half of them are regular coffee mugs. The other half are like camping coffee mugs. 2 of them have my cartoon face on it. One of them has mine and Jessica's cartoon face on it, and our other logos. Soon you'll see the new logo for the new year. So just, it's not there yet. You have to wait. You can do that at themadoneshop.etsy.com for that. Beyond that, get some coffee to put in that mug at rymcoffee.com. Use promo code the Mad Ones, 10% off. righteousfelon.com, Mad Ones. Get yourself some of that turkey jerky that Jessica loves.
The only good turkey is Righteous Felon turkey.
And beyond that, if you're listening to us, you can watch us every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. And it will also be on Rockfin and Odyssey at the same time. But if you want to chat with us and see your comments come up on screen, youtube.com/themadOnes. Join our Patreon. Help us out.
Like and subscribe. Help us get our algorithm up so that we can get super chats. You guys, come on.
We want the super chats.
Super chats.
We want this to pay for itself. That's it.
The super chats.
So join our Patreon as well, because we didn't do a good job at hiding the fact that we pre-recorded this. But everyone, we've had people comment. You've seen their comments come up. If you want to be a part of the people who get to see the shows early when we have someone that's overseas or we have to record off schedule, that's the way to see it. You can be a part of the show every week that way, no matter what. Patreon.com/themadOnes. Beyond that, I'm on Twitter at Cam Harless. Jessica's on Twitter at SoupCanarchist. If you want a shirt, wearethemadOnes.com/store. And we're on all the podcatchers. I don't know what else to tell you. That's all I've got for you. You got anything before Christmas? Any wise Christmas words?
Wise Christmas words. I definitely don't have any of those, but you guys just stay safe out there, make good decisions, and try not to drive after too much celebration. Thank you.
And so with that, we love you. Merry Christmas. And as always, you have a chance to be a light in the world. Go light it up.